So today I have a couple of new products from Fractal Design that both suck and blow. Quietly. Review products provided by Fractal Design. What's up guys, Sil here, and today we're looking at a couple of new fans from Fractal Design. These are their new Venturi case fans, and these are the 120mm ones specifically. These are the HF-12, this is their airflow fan. This is typically what you would use to replace case fans and whatnot in areas where nothing's bouncing up against the fan, it's not restrictive. And these are the HP-12s. These are their high pressure fans. So this is what you would put up against heat sinks, radiators, things like that. They also make these in 140mm, so those would be like the HP-14 and HF-14. And for prices, you will typically see these around $15 for the 120 and $20 for the 140mm fans. So the fans come with a few accessories. Both the HP and HF fans come with 4 screws to screw them into cases, heat sinks, whatever you need to. And then the HFs come with a low speed adapter, which is just like an inline resistor or whatnot, and that brings the top speed down from 1400 RPM all the way down to 1100 RPM. On the HP high pressure fans, they come with a PWM splitter, so if you're putting these on like a 240mm rad or something like that, or say like a 280 if you've got 2 of the 140mm fans, that way if you've only got like one CPU header on your board or whatnot, you don't have to worry about finding another spot for the second fan. You can just split them off this way. So the first thing you notice about these fans when you take them out of the box is the build quality is outstanding. Just for most case fans I'm used to being in the $10 range or whatnot, these you're definitely getting your extra money's worth. They're just a much heavier, much substantial fan. And typically what you see them made out of is the housing and the blades are just typically a molded plastic or whatnot. They might use a better plastic or something like that. But for the ABS or something like that. But for these, Fractal actually is using what they're calling glass fiber reinforced thermoplastic polymer. So what that is I'm guessing sort of like a type of fiberglass. You can kind of see the difference when you look at it. It's got this really nice kind of gray look to it and whatnot. And they had because they're a higher end fan, they add nice little touches like the grooves in the side and the Fractal Design logo on the top. And then on the back where you typically see the sticker where the motor housing is, it's actually a piece of metal there for the plaque on the back. It makes it look really nice and upscaled towards to make you feel better about that extra little bit of money that you spend for these. So starting with the blade design, these have a very similar blade design to that, if not almost identical blade design to the Dynamic or their GP series fans. So what they're doing is they have a technology that they're calling tripwire technology, which is this little groove or little notch on the top of the leading edge of the fan blade, and that creates a micro turbulent layer. And the idea is when the air hits the end of the fan blade, not is it only being much more efficiently pushed through the fan, but also quieter. The other thing that they've done is the stator struts both on the Dynamic and the Venturi are angled towards the fan blade as it's coming in. So instead of having that normal rounded stator strut that holds the motor on or whatnot, what you would have is air's hitting that and it's creating more turbulence and whatnot. So now it's being sort of scooped away from the back of the fan to create less noise. And they've added these little notches inside the areas of the fan blade to even reduce more noise from that whole equation. So one of the things that they're doing now is instead of on the Dynamic series where you just have the plastic shroud and then you screw into that to help reduce any chance of vibration in this or whatnot, they're actually giving you rubber corners that are user replaceable. So if they get chewed up or something, I imagine maybe you can if you look around you can find some extra ones or whatnot, or you can just flip them around the other way is typically what I would do. The thing that's cool about these two is on the 140mm variant of these, they actually give you extra ones. So if you want to stick a 140mm fan in a 120 slot, you can do that by changing the corners out. It's a pretty neat little idea. So the last thing that they stepped up on for the Venturis compared to the Dynamic fans is the bearing. So the GPs are using a hydraulic bearing, and these are using what Fractal's calling specifically a true fluid dynamic bearing. So I guess there's some out there that they don't think are true bearings or whatnot. I'd be interested to ask Fractal about this a little bit later. And what they are, it's a little bearing with herringbone grooves in it, and there's some oil in there, and so as the fan spins up, it's causing that oil to move around inside those grooves and creating a oil pressure between the shaft and between the bearings themselves. They also say this helps stabilize the fan blade, and typically, like in mid-range or low-cost, especially low-cost fans, you'll see like a little bit of wobble or whatnot, or like the tips of the blades moving up and down. I looked really closely for this and couldn't find any in the Venturis. They're built very, very well, and almost to a point where they have to be. I've noticed like even the little air gap or notch between the actual housing and the tops of the blades themselves is much, much closer than you would see like in most other fans. And the last thing I think is really cool is on the back of the Venturis, you can see there's like a little exposed area, and then there's a little piece of like, behind the metal plate, like a little piece of like metal or something. That's actually a magnet, so that's their counterpole magnet. So what that does, and this is very cool, as the fan blades start spinning, you're creating pressure, and then the fan is pushing air out the opposite side, right? But Newton's law is every action creates an opposite and equal reaction, and so the reaction is as these blades are causing air pressure to move past, it's causing pressure on the fan and then on the hub itself, so it's being pushed this way. And what that does is that puts a lot of stress on the bearing itself and causes your bearing to wear out quicker than need be. So what Fractal did is they put a little magnet on the back, and that magnet is keeping the shaft from being pulled out, and hence giving you like longer lifespan on your bearing and whatnot. And because of that, they've rated these fans for 150,000 hours and given them a 3-year warranty. So to test these fans out, I don't really have much for case fans that I can think of, but I wanted to try them in real world use, obviously, and I have a couple of case fans laying around. So one of them being this guy, the Silent Series R2, which is the older fan that came out of my Define Mini. And then I have some older Sigmatech fans that I've got that they're really the cheapest fans you can find. They were $12.50 for a pack of 4 of them, and even if you read the package, I don't think they know what they are. It's like they say that they're optimized for both airflow and pressure for like heat sinks and stuff, and it's like, I don't think you can have both, but sure, let's go for it. So what I did is I did 3 tests on them. One is I love to have an actual air pressure test, but I just kind of took this from everybody else on YouTube, stuck a piece of paper on the back and ran them at full speed to see how far the paper would get blown out. And it also works really good for YouTube. So the other 2 I did is I did a sound level test. So I do have a decibel meter, and I put the microphone 2 inches in front of the fan blades to see how much air they would make. And the decibels in the room, or I should say the ambient room noise, was around 25 decibels, so extremely quiet. There's not much noise or anything going on. I made sure if like the grandfather clock or something like that went off, I wasn't testing at that point in time. And the other thing was the RPM range. So with fans, they'll have like a rated range, but fans are pretty much still like an analog thing. There's not much digital going into them, so you can't always say like this fan's going to run at this speed or whatnot. So I ran them through Fan Expert, which is a ASUS software since I have an ASUS board, and ran them through the benchmark to see what that software is actually reporting the lowest point before they would completely stop, and what the highest point was. Now, if you're running like a cheap fan controller, or you're just plugging into a DC on your motherboard, typically a lot of times with cheaper motherboards they'll just run full speed, so that's where something like the low noise adapter for the HF-12s and 14s comes in really handy. Okay, so for the test, what I'm going to do is, as I'm talking about the fans, I'll show the paper test at the end, and then at the very end of this, I'll just run through them really quick so you guys can see. So for the Sigmatech fans, the lowest I got in Fan Expert was 500 RPM, and these are a DC fans, so they're only 3-pin. 500 RPM, 1,000 like in the middle of the road, and 1,500. And I also rounded off the numbers, so it wasn't exactly, like just flat numbers, but I did some rounding off. So for the Sigmatechs at 500 RPM, the decibel meter picked up 31 decibels. At 1,000 it picked up 34, and at 1,500 it was up to 43 decibels. It was quite loud. You could actually hear the buzzing of like the air hitting the fan blades and whatnot. So the Silent Series R2, I'm still actually very impressed with the R2s, I'd be kind of interested to see what the difference between those and the R3s are. But the R2s, they're DC as well. They're 3-pin, as you can see. 3-pin, or maybe not see. There you go. See, 3 pins. And I got a minimal rate before they would stop of 400 RPM. Extremely low, especially for a DC fan. Middle of the road, they went up to 750, and max I can only get 1100 RPM. And these are actually supposed to be rated for 1200, so they fell a little bit short of what they're actually supposed to be rated for. But regardless of that, at 400 RPM, they only made 30 decibels. At 750, they made 32, and at 1100 or 1100, they made 35 decibels. I really gotta put this down. I keep on spinning it. For the Venturi HF-12s. So for these guys, I'm kind of shocked that, they're still DC fans, they're still 3 pins, but they're 400 RPM, which is still really low for a DC fan. At half, because they're rated a little bit higher than the Silent Series, they did 950 RPM, and at full they did 1,500 RPM, 1,500 RPM. So, going through these, at 400 RPM, they were only making 27 decibels. I could have, just basically wrestled in my chair and made more noise than these things can. At 950 RPM, which is 250 higher than the Silent Series R2, they're 2 decibels lower at 30 decibels. And only until we went up to 1500 RPM did they start getting to what I would call noisy for a fan. They were at 41 decibels. Now with the, I put the low noise adapter, the L and A on there. I was just curious about the maximum RPM and what the noise difference would be. And so, one thing to note is running it through Fan Expert, it changed my lowest idle. So, that's what I was talking about before, where I had an issue with Fan Expert. If I used the low noise adapters on this board, the fans didn't work right. It would say they were spinning at 350 RPM or something, and report that to the board, and then what would actually be going on is they're not spinning at all. So I had to take the low noise adapter off, but it works for a full speed test. But the lowest I could get with the low noise adapter on was 550 RPM. So it actually raised that level up. So I didn't really see a need to keep it on there, seeing that the Fan Expert control software is so good anyways. But that's just something to keep in mind if you're putting this on an Asus board or some other board with similar fan control software. But the full speed that I got out of them was 1,150 RPM, so a little bit faster than what's reported with the low noise adapter. But that lowered the maximum decibel range from 41 decibels at 1500 down to 36 decibels. So, pretty quiet fan with the low noise adapter, do pretty well, especially if you're just putting on a motherboard where the fans are going to ramp at full speed all the time. Very cool to have that low noise adapter in there, and still relatively pretty quiet. So the next fan is the HP12s, the high pressure fans. This is what you would stick on radiators and whatnot. And these have a 4-pin PWM connector on them. And the thing that's nice about these is they typically ramp down a lot lower. So for these on idle speed or low speed, they got 300 RPM. Halfway though, because they do get kind of crazy. They actually get a lot higher than the airflow fans. They halfway was 1,050 RPM, and at full blast they were doing 1,800 RPM. So at 300, I got ambient noise levels. I got 25 dB, which is what they would have sounded like if they were off. Matter of fact, I did shut them off. I went into the fan control software and went shut off and see if there's any difference whatsoever. And it didn't pick up anything. It was 25 flat with the room noise. At 1050, they were 30 decibels, which is kind of weird because, well, that's pretty much on par with where the HFs were. They were 950 as opposed to 100 RPM more. They're still 30 decibels. At the weird thing for me though was where the HF12s were reporting 41 decibels at 1,500 RPM. These were running at 1,800 RPM and only running at 40 decibels. So I was kind of curious about that. I put something right next to it, and it did make it louder by 2 decibels by 42. I put a heatsink, Sigmatech heatsink I have on it, and I could only pick up, like, with the microphone 2 inches away, 2 decibels more. So you wouldn't really realistically run these at 1,800 RPM, but typically, like, when I'm running them, the fan doesn't run much more than 500 RPM. So anyways, like, all around, these are very, very quiet. I didn't hear any hum, noise, whining, or anything from the motor whatsoever. There was no rattling, no nothing. They're dead quiet in the system. Now, just to give you guys an idea right now, I was running the Silent Series and the Sigmatech fan that came with my Gaia cooler on there. And the cooler fan was running at pretty much 1,000 RPM all the time. I will say that this is now running warmer. The CPU is running warmer than it was before by about a couple degrees, but it's much, much quieter. Matter of fact, I have a SSD in my system, and when the mechanical drive I use for backup actually spins down, it's kind of eerily quiet in here. I can't even say barely. I can't hear the damn system, and I know the fans are spinning, which is something I couldn't say before. Even with the fans running at a low speed before with the Silent Series and whatnot, I could hear it slightly. The only thing I can hear now is the hard drive hum, and that's it. And that's the only time it's spinning is 5 minutes when I start it up or when I need it. Other than that, it shuts down and the system is dead quiet. Running under load, they ramp up really nice. They're still not too noisy. I would say it's like whisper quiet, even like running something kind of crazy like a benchmark or something like that. So I'm very, very, very impressed with these fans. I don't have too much bad to say about them. And I like the little touches that they did where they made sure instead of like the multicolored cables on the end of it and whatnot, they've actually made them all black. And they've also done this on the GP fans and the Silent Series too. They've made them like a black ribbon cable and whatnot. So you don't have something kind of like clashing in your system where you have like that crazy rainbow like you do on the cheap Sigmatechs or whatnot. So these are very cool, and on the Venturis I really appreciate the braided cable and stuff like that. It's pretty nice. So yeah, guys, if you're looking for some fans and you don't want to quite spend as much as Noctua but still want pretty good results, and especially want really quiet fans, I would say definitely look into these. They're definitely worth the buy in my book. It's pretty cool.